purpose.
Okay. Object lesson.
It's either that or I push
Hey,
my.
hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Maxon Color. I'm glad that you're joining us today. Hopefully you are stay healthy and stay well. And if you are joining from the northern hemisphere of the world, I hope you enjoy the blasting heat of the summer. And yeah, today we are joined by our good friend of mine, Tony Bari. And I think it's your first time here, Tony, at Max on Color, right? But if you are has been following us like for a couple of time already, probably Tony's face is not very new because he did a lot of webinar and Max on channel as well. So let me introduce you about to Tony. Tony is a filmmaker and also post-productions consultant and finishing editor based in Los Angeles. And in today's episode, I would like to ask Tony about his experience and perhaps ask him to share about how to prepare or prepping a timeline that was consist of different sources from different brand of cameras. If you're a colorist, you know that those camera manufacturers, they have their own secret sauce, uh, their own take on how to what is the best color or so on and so forth. So managing those type of stuff probably important for you if you want to bring all the timeline into Resolve for further grading. And the project is actually today's discussion is actually based on a project that we did a couple of months ago. I think Chad and Tony went to a desert to shot a
The,
motorcycle
a
documentaries.
beach.
A
A
beach.
beach.
I thought it's a desert. And they shot a motorcycle documentary, and then we thought that we could share the process with you guys. And actually, we're making the whole lot, how do you call it, the whole entire process, and we share it on the Mystifying Post Productions webinar as well, which going on every, which, how do you call it? It takes place every Monday. And let me share you the screen. So if you're interested about the whole productions aspect that we covered, last week we talked about, I mean, last Monday we talked about the planning uh, side of it, and then next week we'll talk about the shoot, and then the edit, and then at week 4 we'll be talking about the grade in the demystifying post-production webinar. But since the demystifying post-production webinar is only like 1 hour, it seems that actually when we are grading this project for only 1 hour, I think we'll be skipping a lot of important details. So that's why I thought perhaps we can cover the how do you call it, the
The
steps.
technical side.
Exactly, the steps after the edit, but before the grading. That is the prepping side in this episode. So, without me telling all the spoilers that Tony will cover, let me just take you to this normal housekeeping. And you know that you can get free T-shirt, right? And today's and I mean in this episode, if you want to get a free T-shirt, I think chat will copy and paste the link to the chat sections, and you can use the, how do you call it, the code to get your free T-shirt that you see in your how do you call it, screen right now. It's Creative Workflows, by the way. And if you use that code, you can get one of this T-shirt that you see. Let me share my screen again. You can get one of this T-shirt, and you only need to pay for the shipping cost, which is around like $4. And if you missed the last recording, like the last episode of Max on Color or any webinars that was done um, at Max on channel, you can go to YouTube and check out the Max on training team. There you can find all the recordings of our webinars. So if you want to catch up, for example, if you just missed the last Ask the Trainer, there are all recorded and available for public viewing. So without further ado, let me hand it out the floor to Tony Bari. Hey, Tony, the floor is yours, man. Take it away.
All right. Hello, hello. And welcome to Thursday morning if you're on the West Coast. And if you're on the East Coast, you're already at lunchtime. And if you're anywhere else, it's almost time for bed. Who knows? All right. So we're going to talk about a couple of things with organization, everybody's favorite topic. It does a lot for you to capture the full potential of what you intended to shoot. So if I go in here, I'm going to just show you my timeline here. And inside of this timeline,
let me share the screen. Sorry.
Yep. All right. I'll start back up here. I just kind of inside of here. I'm gonna hit the tilde key. I'm inside of Adobe Premiere in the latest version, and I'm gonna hit the tilde key here, and I'm just gonna show you. I have everything. This is best possible. Okay. This is something that doesn't always happen, but it definitely makes people smile when you organize like this, because it makes everybody's job that much easier. So I have a timeline here, and in this timeline, I have it organized by track and by camera and even color coded. So every clip that's on this track was shot with the FX6, the Sony FX6. Every clip on this track was shot with the Canon C70, Canon R5, and then this is the drone. And all this stuff right here, this takes a little bit of time, but the easiest part about it is, let me show you a feature that Adobe started doing in one of the latest releases. They have created something for you that makes life that much easier. Before I even go into that, I want to talk about if you had a flat clip and you wanted to prepare this for color before it even lands, for color or for finishing, if you wanted to organize it from a flat cut. Now, this is ProRes, that's in log, that's 10-bit, hopefully. I hope everybody, if you're shooting with cameras and it has the 10-bit mode, please do 10-bit 422. All right. If you're trying to squeeze that much more on your memory card, spend the extra $50 and get 422 footage. That's 10-bit. Okay. So let's go in here, and I'm going to just right click on this clip. This part right here is flat. These are the same exact thing. I dirtied this up a little bit to look like it was already edited. So I added some transitions. I made some color labels, and you're going to see what I can do with that in just a second. So inside of here, I have my flat clip. I'm just going to right click on it, and I'm going to choose Scene Edit Detection. Okay. Scene Edit Detection. With that, I get a few options, right? And my options are apply a cut at each detected cut point. That's my default. That's the easiest thing, and that's what I want to do in this case. In other cases, it'll create a bin of subclips, so each cut becomes its own asset that you can actually export afterward. If you have a whole bin of just subclips, you can select them and send them over to the media encoder, and they will export at whichever flavor you want to export them at, with handle if you choose. And then also, this one will just put markers there at each cut point. So, but what we want to do is just apply a cut. So I'm going to just click this button, and this is the Adobe Sensei doing the work. The artificial intelligence inside the program does a really good job. So I'm going to click on this, and it's just going to go down the line here. And then it adds the cuts. And if I just go here, you should be able to see if I go back and forth, those are two different cuts. I go back and forth, two different cuts, so on and so forth. It does a pretty good job. Okay. So let's just say that I knew what each camera was shot on, right? So like each clip was shot on using which camera. If I knew that everything from this long shots were shot on the Canon and everything from the interview was shot on the Sony, right? I can start organizing. So in Premiere, you can go here and let's just do one of my favorite shortcuts is do this accordion thing with the tracks. I'm on a Mac, but on the PC it should be the same. It's hold the Shift key and hit the plus. And what that does, it just opens up all your tracks. If you hit the minus, it condenses everything to its minimum. So maximum and minimum, and that's just hold Shift and the plus. And then I'll go over here to where it says video one, and I'm just going to replicate what I have inside of here with C70, FX6, R5, and then drone. So I'm just going to put that here. I won't go through the whole thing, but I just want to show you how to do it. Right click, choose rename, and then I'm going to make this Canon C70. And for this instance, because you know, the fonts are so small, I totally don't mind all caps. It's not an email, so it's totally fine. So right click, rename. This is Canon R5. And then I'll go back to this one here and make that all caps. I say whenever you need to give direction inside of a program, it's not a bad idea to make it big and bold. That way you don't get a phone call at 2 in the morning or 4 in the morning or whenever they absolutely need it. So drone. Okay. So with this, once I have this flat and it's already cut up, let's say, you know, it's not an edited cut and it's just a flat piece, you can go here and then I can just kind of step around. When you're doing this, a good thing to do is go under the sequence menu, and then you'll see selection follows playhead. So basically, as I go up and down my timeline, each clip will be selected, and then all I have to do is hold the Option key or Alt key if you're on a PC, and I can just go up and down arrow. So if I go here, that's already checked. So I'll go up, right? And I'm like, up, this is a Sony. This was the Canon R5, Canon R5. This was shot with the Canon. So I'm just gonna go through and do a few of these. R5.
What's the key modifier again, Tony, that you use?
So it's the Option key.
Option.
Hold the Option. So Option if you're on a Mac, but if you speak PC, that's Alt.
That's Alt, yeah.
Yep. So I go here, and that's R5. And you can just literally go up and down this timeline and start organizing like this. And before you know it, you'll have a masterpiece of organization, right? And again, that just makes people smile and want to work with you again. So job security. So it's easy to be messy. If I go here, like this is looking more like what you would see when you are handed a cut that needs to go to a finishing process. So what I'm going to do now, and you know, because I have these both in the same timeline, this right here is gonna be included in that. But I'll cut this out here, and I'll actually show you something I like to do before that. This is a way to archive your cut. So if I already have this, I can right click, and then I can choose, where are we here? And it may have moved, so don't mind me. It's, make subsequence. So if I do a make subsequence, it archives that into its own timeline, and there it is. So before I even move on, I've made a subsequence of it. So in case you do all this work, you like where things are, this is a way to do, it's another way of doing versioning as well. And you can make that a hotkey if you like. Just select everything just one more time. Let's say I wanted to take just the top half of this, right? And I'm going to select just these clips, everything that's on a different track. And I'm going to right click, and I'll choose make subsequence. It makes another subsequence. Let me double click that. And it only brought the stuff that I selected. So this is one way to archive and increment and version your work. And you can do that even if it's just a scene, if you're editing or anything that you want to do, but you need to move on, but you want to archive. That's one way to do it. Keep your ideas intact before moving on. So now that I've done that, and I've done it twice, I can go here. Let me just blow this away because it's not going to we're not going to need it. And I'll take away this clip marker. Now right click, and where is it? For this, edit marker and delete. I usually have the markers panel up, makes life easier. So if I go into here, I'll zoom in, and now I'm going to select everything here, and I'm going to choose sequence, simplify sequence. I think you don't have to select everything. I think you just need to select the timeline that you're on. So sequence, simplify sequence. You don't need to select everything because it's targeting the sequence that's the tab that's selected forward. So now simplify sequence. Now I want you to know before I do this, I have some transitions in here. I have different color labels in here. Let's just assume I have effects in here. I have a whole bunch of things inside of here, right? And then we'll see here, close vertical gaps. This is literally a questionnaire that just makes your life easier. So pay attention to what it asks before you click simplify, and you might come up with something better. So you have the option here, close vertical gaps on video tracks, yes. Flatten all multicams. So if you had multicams, you're doing a 2-camera interview and that's in a cut in your timeline, that'll flatten. I want to say, as long as I'm not 100% that the audio source might not have a hiccup. I've seen that before, but I believe that should be good to go. But if it isn't, just double check it before, okay? Remove video tracks, remove audio tracks, remove both. Remove from, sorry, any of these checks in the box. So this is basically saying it's going to go in and scan for all of these things, right, beforehand, right? So you can say remove from both in this case. But I actually just really care about the video tracks. I'll switch that up. And then let's go to remove empty tracks, right? I don't have any, but if I did, you can click that box. If you have graphics, graphics are basically if you use the essential graphics panel and you make text and anything like that, and you need to make a text list version of your project before it goes to broadcast or before it goes to whoever, typical thing to do is to make text list edits that basically new graphics and everything can be, it's either original thing or goes to a different country. And it's very common to remove all text and all graphics. So not a bad idea. So if you have anything with graphics, if you don't already isolate it on a track, you can just click this and it looks for it anyway. Pretty interesting. Transitions, all right? You see I have a few transitions in here. And then through edits. Through edit is literally what's up. You go to a clip, you add a cut like I just did. And then all of those cuts that are the same thing, if it is one clip that has been cut in two for no apparent reason, you didn't do an effect on one side, you didn't adjust it on the other or scale it, and it's just a cut, and it just helps when you're editing, but it doesn't help in the finishing process because you don't want to end up with two scenes to cut when it's just one solid scene. So it's a good idea to remove the through edits. So in this case, I don't really care because everything here is a through edit. So disabled or muted tracks. So if you purposely turn something off because it's not the actual mix and you want to really just use the official sound mix or something that was sent to you, or if you're using specific tracks, like you have official graphics with alpha all on the top, whatever the case may be, if you muted it or turned it off and it's some kind of lower resolution or not high quality, then you can basically keep it disabled and keep it muted, right? Like disable on the video side, like with the eyeball off, or muted with the M for the audio, right? And then same with just clips. So either on a track basis or on a clip basis or anything offline. So if you have offline clips, right, the big red X and all the different languages, and then clip labels. So for this one, I just want to remove, I'm going to remove the mango clips, right? Because mango makes no sense as a color label. So I'll go here.
What color is that? Mango color.
I know it's orange, but if you pick up a Crayola box, then it'll start to make more sense. Yeah. But in this instance, I'm just going to remove mango. I love mango, but I'm going to take it away in this instance. So now I'm going to go here. And if you had any sequence markers, you can do the same. I have this red marker that's stretched across the whole thing, and I'm just going to put a check in the box for removing that marker. I want to say, yeah, you can do more than one at a time. And those are the lovely colors that you get to work with. And not necessarily standardized, but, red, this olive drab, and whatever these are right here. But I can click, and I'm just going to remove that red marker, and I'm going to click Simplify. And that was pretty crazy. It removed my clips that were mango. I targeted those clips. Let's say, for instance, quite often when you need to, download stock footage and you get the low resolution version just to cut with until it's approved by a producer or whoever, or by your client, right? Sometimes you just leave it in there for timing and, or just laziness, and you're just afraid for some weird reason that the high res goes offline. At least you have that in there. I don't know why people leave it in there, but it's a good way to just target. And so it did many things all at one time. It removed transitions. It removed the clips that were color labeled with mango. It smashed everything down to the single track. This is the best way to work when you're doing anything in the finishing process. And basically, if I wanted to stack them back up by camera order, that's an ideal situation. Doesn't always happen, but most of the time, people are going to be looking for a V1 situation, especially if you're going to XML this over to another program, because the least common denominator, you don't want to have so many eccentric things inside of your timeline that translate in Premiere, but don't work in Avid, don't work in Resolve, because each one of these programs, they have the same core, but they don't speak the exact same language. So,
Tony, where was that simplify sequence command again?
So if you go here up to the menu and the sequence, and then it's all the way down. And then just to reiterate, you don't have to select anything in your timeline. You don't have to do like Command A or Control A. It's basically whichever sequence is highlighted here, and whichever one that you're looking at, that's targeted. So it knows exactly which one to work with.
Cool, thank you.
So now, again, to get to this, you can do the work inside of here. And like I said, by just keeping the selection follows playhead, and then just go up and down the track, right? Go up and down your tracks, right? So you can do all that pretty easily, and then send that over. But let's jump ahead, and I do want to show you something that has to do with color before you even send it to anybody to do the color. This is very important. So this is something that it's a great idea. I still think that there should be a preference to disable metadata baked in LUTs from camera files. Now, you wouldn't see it on a flattened cut. If everything was transcoded and like every production facility or post house does things different, or a production company or whatever it is, if you're receiving something that's camera original, this can be a problem. If you're receiving something that's a transcode, like a ProRes or something easier to edit, especially if it was shot with GoPro or whatever the case may be, and you want to make it something more edit friendly, or it's just a standard where you work to transcode everything to ProRes or to DNX. A lot of places are like that. So if you're using camera original footage, meaning the MXF files, when you bring them into Adobe Premiere, you're going to get exactly what was shot. So this is what was shot, yes and no. It's the LUT that's attached, but not at the same time. Maybe the DP was not looking at that LUT, but it's in the metadata because it's in the menu setting of your camera. So the good part about this, you can instantly get to a good spot if it was exposed for this LUT. If it was not exposed for this, and it was supposed to look something like this, which is very common before you do any color, that you have something flat. Let me show you a couple preferences, and I'm going to show you a few places to look inside of Premiere to make these fixes before you wonder why things look super saturated. All right. So I'm going to
quick question, Tony. So if I'm shooting without the specific LUT that you're mentioning here, will the same LUT also get like baked into my clip if I'm not doing the steps you're showing?
Yeah, if let's say for instance you bring it in, and in the camera you don't have a LUT targeted.
Yeah, exactly.
It should not do this. I almost always just by default have something there, what flavor I'm shooting in, whatever the gamma curve is, right? It's just switched on. So I don't dial it in to where, I don't turn those off, but I want to say if you're on a camera and you can choose to not shoot with that gamma curve, it's just literally going to pick. I'll show you what it looks like if this helps. But I have not experienced not seeing this. So sorry, double negative there. I have not seen where it comes in as is perfectly. So interpret footage. By the way, let me just backtrack. Right click, right? And then let's go to reveal in project, not in Finder or Explorer on the Windows side, but in project. You can see this is the MXF. This is a camera original file, straight from a card, copied to a drive. Right click on that file. Go to modify, interpret footage. How do I want to interpret this footage? You might know this from doing the audio channels, right? Just in case you have one, you're hearing the interview only on the right and you want to make it dual mono or just single channel mono. In the same area, you go to interpret footage and then go to color management. And then by default, it's reading right here. It's reading that color space from file is Sony S-Log3, S-Gamma 3, right? So that is giving me this crazy looking, saturated, super crunched look, which is not my intention, right? So I'll go here to where it says color space override, and I'm going to normalize this to 709. Not 709 scene, but it's 709. And then I'm going to hit OK. And then you're going to see it instantly looks a lot more normal. Now, here's the thing. I did that for one asset. Yes, I can do this to all assets. I can select all right, like this through this. I can do this to 100 files. I can do this to 1,000 files. I haven't done it to 1,000 files, so don't quote me on that, but it works. The menus will click and things will confirm. So I can go here, and then, what I would say is if you have, what I've seen is when you do this to multiple files, if you've done it to one, then go back. Here's the fun part. Go back in case things are sticky on only one. All right, go back, commit, right click. Like I basically reset the one so I can match them all, and then go back to modify, interpret footage, and then go to color space, override. Now hit OK. And then what that should do is if I were to bring all of these in with all their lovely audio channels, these should all look normal. So that is my point, is that you want to make sure that you're not using the LUT or the gamma curve off the bat, especially if you weren't exposing for it. So even if you select that gamma curve, you still can see things in log. So it's just really pulling from the metadata inside of your camera on the card. So, and this works camera to camera, slightly different. But another thing I want you to pay attention to is under the preferences in the PC side, preferences are in the file menu. On the Mac, they're under the Premiere menu. And let's just go to general. Now, not everybody has an HDR monitor. Not everybody has something fancy. Some people are just on their laptop. And this can cause some confusion. It might have been updated, but my quick default is to go here to the general and the preferences and go to display color management, which also requires GPU acceleration. Those of you on an i7 still, that could be a problem. If you're on an i9, that still can take, kind of throttle your machine a little bit. So, and then also extended dynamic range monitoring when available. By default, if I'm going system to system, I just turn it off. If I know that this project is going to go elsewhere, this is on my machine, but by default, I just work like this. So everything stays across the board. SDR, I'm not thinking about anything with HDR, HDR10, anything like that. This is for SDR. And then also display color management requires GPU acceleration. If you're on an i7 or an older computer, then that probably is not what you want to check. So just letting you know, display color management, extended dynamic range monitoring, I would just uncheck those two. And then another place to look, go under the sequence menu and then sequence settings. Why would this ever be a problem? Because sometimes people select clips, they right click on them and they choose make a sequence from this clip. So what does it do? It makes a sequence exactly how that clip, everything about that metadata in that clip. So just in case you had something, any weird hiccup in the way that things look, go here to your sequence settings and choose your working color space. And make sure that it's not an HLG or PQ. These are your HDR modes. Things will really look strange. They basically will look like posterized color. It just looks like, you know, neon and way too saturated. So in here, 709, make sure that's checked. And then also weird things like this. You don't want to render your preview files as animation codec because the animation codec is very old and antique and can cause some issues in playback depending on your system. So I just put that back to regular ProRes and then I hit OK. So I just wanted to show you how to normalize. And basically now if you look, this same clip, now that I modified that metadata to not point to the gamma curve, but to point to just regular 709, everything is the typical log and washed out. If you're used to resolve, working in log means you see log. Here, your intention is what your output's going to be. That's 709. So just to take you through that lovely journey of where you turn things on and where you turn things off. And then I will show you when you have things all set up and you're ready to go, all right, you can take this and let me do this. I always love the right click inside of all the Adobe apps. Majority of the time, there's something, this is called the contextual menu for a reason. There's something in context that you're going to need, like reveal sequence and project. Even this one, by the way, is pretty awesome. If you did all the work, just so you know, if you did all the work, you can create preset from sequence. When they added that in, I thought that was pretty awesome because if you have all your audio tracks dialed in, you have all your video tracks dialed in, and now you have this roadmap of where things live, you can now create a preset with that. And that's just good to have on hand. You can always grab a whole cut and paste it in and everything will live and you can organize things. Audio tracks, narration, and nat sound and all this good stuff, music bed. And then on the color side, organized by, you know, graphics or, you know, your camera originals, your stock, whatever the categories of the footage that you're using. So not a bad idea to have this. Anyway.
So it creates a sequence preset?
So
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's something new. And like, these are my favorite thing. Everything that doesn't hit the press release, this is the stuff that I like to dig into. Every time there is a new update, there's a lot of little text that comes out with the updates that if you look on the Adobe support pages, you'll be able to read all these little enhancements. And then also, it doesn't hurt to just go through the menus and just check them out and see what's there, because that's my favorite thing about every update, especially if it's a fall update, like an NAB update, anything that's a major update that you can anticipate. That's when I like to dig in and just see if there's a brand new menu item. So
yeah, dude, the little small features are like always way better than the big ones they're pushing.
Absolutely. I mean, simplify sequence, it seems small, but that was a big one, and that kind of saves a ton of time. And one of my favorite things about it is, like, that's typically my job. And you know, am I saving time? Yes, but I'm going to use that time for other things, really annoying little checklist things to go back and forth on. So if I can smash the sequence down pretty easily, play it back, and it all looks fine, and it removes certain elements, and I can do stuff like, you know, going in and just targeting certain areas, right? And I just want these 3 clips to live exactly spaced the same. I love the way that worked. And do make subsequence. That's game-changing stuff for me. So
yeah,
these are all little things that they listen to and they pay attention.
That's
so
really great. Yeah.
You know, so yeah, once we have all of our elements the way that we want them, you can just select, right? And I want to say you don't have to do Command A or Control A. Just target what you want to export. I want to say you can do, can you right click it? Can't right click it, but I can File, Export, and then go here to Here's another one that I love, by the way, since I'm in this menu. Selection is Premiere Project. So if you have all this stuff, all your secret sauce, all your like, nests and all these cool things like that, you can break down all the nests when you simplify. You can do all this stuff, and now you just have only the clips. Why not hand off something that has a lot less in it? It's just a lot less stuff that people have to see about your organization skills. So you can do selection as a Premiere Project. So now you have a condensed Premiere Project without doing media management. It's just literally going to see what you targeted. If I targeted this and this, it's only going to give me those two as a Premiere Project. So I really love that feature. That feature's been in the mix for quite some time, at least 4 or 5 years. But in here, I'm now going to choose Final Cut XML. Yes, there are other options. OMF, EDL. EDL, again, when you do some of these legacy situations where you have to send it to a program that doesn't speak apples to apples with Adobe, right? You use some of these legacy things such as the EDL, right? I know a lot of colorists actually like the EDL, right? Or you can even do, you could do the OMF, that's more for sound, but we can do the ALE, and we can do the XML is probably the preferred method. I know it says Final Cut Pro XML. That's not the case. This is going to DaVinci Resolve. And then what I'll do is I would save it in my files. I've already done this. So I'll show you. Max, do we have enough time to?
Yeah, sure, man.
Okay.
I want to say that the decision that we didn't go with the XML approach when we did the productions back then is that the considerations of downloading the camera original files, because it was huge, and
yes.
That's why we prefer something else, and it was faster, which Tony going to.
Oh yeah, so
soon
you have
mention,
actually
right?
you have a bunch of stuff to talk about. So let me just do this. I already did the work. I'm going to hit cancel, and I'm just going to flip over like this was a cooking show. And I imported my XML here. It comes up with a box that just simply says, and I'll bring it in again just to show you. Import, you want to do import timeline. You don't want to do import media from XML. You do import timeline inside of Resolve. And then I'll go here to XML. And then this has a ton of options, as you can see. All right, just leave it on the basic one here, the top one that says FCP XML. Now there is another, it used to be 2 different types of Final Cut Pro XMLs. Not going to get into that today, but leave it at the default here. Hit open, and then what you get greeted with the screen right here, which is another questionnaire that you should pay attention to. All right, sizing information if you scaled your footage. And then also your timeline resolution. So if I worked in 4K and this says 1080, or I was working in 1080 just so I can size things down and do the work in 1080 on my laptop, I do that quite frequently. Both Premiere and Resolve will do the sizing for you. And as long as things are in the same aspect ratio, you won't even see a difference, except your footage looks a little fuzzier when you're in 1080 than when you're in 4K. So I typically like to work in 1080 and then right-click, select everything, blow it back up to 4K. So that I'm guilty of making 1080 stuff.
So you're working on 1080 timeline, and then how do you call it? Scale it up back in the deliver page, right?
Yes. Well, I would rather do it. Before I do the XML, I would do it because you don't want things to land as 1080. Could cause some issues. So up-res back to normal in your host application, then send that across. But here's your options. You can even rename this, and you can change it to your new timeline name. So it's saying import this timeline and then rename it, and I can say from XML, right? So you can have that there. This is the file that it's targeting. So I put the date on it just so I don't mix the two up. I've printed multiple XMLs before because there's some issue or something came across, I need to turn something off. You have effects on there. That's why removing effects is great. Removing transitions is great. So many things that the Simplify sequence does. And then inside of here, you have your questionnaire. And then, when you click OK, that's when you get something that looks like this. Did the track names come over? No, they did not. So anyway, I don't want to take up the whole time, so I'll hand it back over to you, Max. And if there are any questions or anything, you know.
So yeah, let me take it from there, Tony. Let me share my screen. So the idea is that except how do you call it? Not except on top of Tony sending me the Baked master for 422, he also sent me, was it 422 or 444? I don't remember anymore. But
yeah, I think for this cases it was 422 for the master. Yeah, the 4K one is 444.
Okay, so yeah, downloading those Baked master file is like it's faster compared to downloading the camera original. And since Tony had prepped the timeline in DaVinci Resolve, it means that he can just import the DRT. He can just export the DRT files. And on my side, what I did is that, so let me just delete everything here. What I did is that I just bring in the Baked master, and then go to the edit, and then import the timeline that he exported to me, simply just by pressing the timeline. Oh, was it edit, import timeline?
Yeah, import timeline.
I remember the shortcuts. It's Control
It's okay.
Shift I, and then there you go. It open the window, and then you just locate the timeline that you receive that you got from your editor, and then this is what I just did. Press open, and simply just by doing that, I got exactly the same cut and everything that Tony had prepped for me.
This is resolve to resolve.
Exactly. Since
this is if it was cut and resolve, or it was already somebody on the online finishing side already did this in Resolve.
Exactly. So there's no need to do like the scene cut detections and guess the edit points, so on. Everything is already in DRT, everything covered, so you can just focus on grading. So before we grade, normally the approach that I normally do is that to watch the whole clips, just to understand the story. What are the stories? And yeah, so you know, if you got the overview of the stories, normally you can get a better overview of what you're grading. So what I did is normally just like play in a double speed, but if you want to see the piece, the whole piece, I think it's only a couple of like 1 minute or something. Let me just play the clips. So we know that there's like a B-roll, somebody's writing, and then another B-roll in the city, and then talking head in the same locations, right? And another B-roll, product detail, in this case the motorcycle, and another writing B-roll, and so on. I see that there are a couple of different scenes already. Okay. And another talking head, another drone footage on top of that. Okay, low light situations there. Back to the main actor, and B-roll again. And then finally, another low light shot. And another drone footage, right? So that was like the whole cut that Tony did for the whole project. And now the question is like, how do I approach my color grading here? Of course, the approach that I'm going to share with you probably is not very new to somebody has already started in color grading, but to somebody just, you know, recently picking up the craft, probably this can be a good tip, because, you know, in Resolve, you can do groupings, and you can do groupings based on criteria that you like. I mean, you can group your clips based on the camera type, because we have like different camera type here. But the way I approach grouping is that I want to group it per scene, so the grade can serve the story better. If we go to color page, you can see like by default there are only like 2 different categories in your node tree, and that's it. That is the clip category and then the timeline category. Once you group them, you will unlock 2 more categories, and that is the post group and then the post clip and then the pre-clip group. So to give you a better overview about that, let's switch to a different timeline. So once you group your clip, you will have like 4 different categories, and the first one is the timeline, and then after that you have like the post clip and then the pre-clip. The way I like to treat these groupings is to fit them into the scene. So for example, if I want to create a look for my whole project, I better do that in my timeline or in the post clip category, because post clip is like the whole scene, and a scene normally consists of different shots, and that is the clip. And the pre-clip is just similar like post clip, except that the effects that you're doing on pre-clip is applied before your clip, and then if you're doing something on your post clip, the effect will be done after the clip, but it's still it is it's affecting the clip per scene. So if you change something on scene A, all the clips in scene A will got affected, and by doing that you can like really speed it up. So the proof in the pudding, let us just see that instead of me talking it. So the way I like to do that is simply by going to this feature in Resolve. It's called Lightbox, right? If we go back to edit, we saw previously that we have a different camera here. So that information probably will be important when I'm setting up my color management. So let's go to color page. And before we group that, let's set up the color management first. And in this case, the approach that I use in the grade is that we're setting everything using ACES. And hey, Thanasis just show up in the chat. Hey, man. So in order to set up ACES and Resolve, you can go to the project settings and go to the color management tab. Under color science, if you open the options, there are 4 different options. DaVinci Y RGB, as Colin Kelly said last couple of weeks in Maxon Color as well. DaVinci Y RGB means like, don't do the color management, I got it, right? So if you want to do your own color management, select DaVinci Y RGB. And you have the Resolve color management under DaVinci Y RGB color manage. And you have 2 flavors of ACES, ACES-CC or ACES-CCT. And if you want to know the difference about ACES-CC and ACES-CCT, you can go back and watch the recording that we did with Colin last 2 weeks or last 3 weeks, right, chat? And he explained it in really great detail about it. And in this case, I just want to go and select ACES-CCT. Here I can mention what type of clip I am working with. Since we are working with multiple different clips, I think I'll tag them separately, not in the project level, but I'll tag them per clip. So I'll leave it as no input transform here. And then the output transform is like, what kind of screen are we targeting here? Are we delivering into? And in this case, I already know that I am monitoring my images on Rec 709, and I will target Rec 709 as my output. And there is also a checkbox that you can activate if you want to use the new ACES 1.3 reference gamut compressions. And simply just leave it checked, and also use the color space grading aware tools. And by checking the use color space grading grading tools, color space aware grading tools, some tools inside DaVinci Resolve will be processing the effects like how do you call it? It suddenly become aware of what type of like working color space you are in. So in this case, I'll just activate that and hit save. And now you'll see that everything looks like, oh, did I do something wrong? That is not the case, because we haven't set up the input of our clip. We haven't tell ACES what type of clip we are working with, right? So in this case, you can tag your clip in different way. You can do that by right-clicking on your clip and select ACES input transform. You can do that in color page. You can do that in media page. The way I like to do that is that I can tag that while I group that, and that is by using this feature, Lightbox. So if I open Lightbox, all my clips will be shown as thumbnails here. And if I'm not mistaken, all the mango color was a Sony FX6, if I'm not mistaken. And here I can just right click and select ACES input transform. This is Sony S-Log3 as Gamut Cine, and you'll see that it will update. Will it update? Update all thumbnails. There you go. And the teal one, I think these are Canon C70, right, Tony?
Yep, those are all Canon. Yep.
These are Canon C70. So right click, ACES input transform, Canon. As you can see, if you don't tag it like correctly, if you don't prep your timeline, you'll spend your time like guessing what type of
yeah, it's log 2.
Canon-log 2 or log 3?
Log 2.
Okay, that
log 2 has the most
range, right?
Yes.
And there you go, Canon C70, Canon-log 2 daylight cinema. Yep. And we still have another clip, and I think those are,
it's R5.
The Canon R5.
Yeah, all the gimbal stuff is the R5.
Yeah. So here, right click again, Canon. Wait a second. Did I select? Okay. No, not this one, but that one.
Yep.
This ACES input transform Canon R5.
Log 2, yeah.
Log 2 daylight cinema. Yep. And that's it. And we have 2 drone clip. So that one, I'll choose ACES input transform, invert display, and Rec 709. So
I think you still need to update all thumbnails.
If I update all thumbnails, everything will look correct now. Right. Wait a second. Did I tag it correctly? Why all the teals suddenly in log again? That's weird.
You might have one that's selected from another group.
Yeah, that's the thing. You really need to be careful about it. Exactly. So now oh, sorry, I think I did a mistake. So sorry, bear with me, guys. The teal is actually Canon C70 and not Sony FX6.
Yep.
So there you go.
And the fact that it's not an outline, it's just a tiny little dot in the corner.
Yeah.
It's easy to mess that up.
Update thumbnails.
There you go.
So there you go. I think we got it, and this one should be Canon C. It should be Sony. I think I how do you call it? Did a mistake and select.
Hey Max.
Yes.
While you're looking around, I got a question. could you give me an example of grading pre-clip, or like what the type of thing you do on pre-clip? Is that kind of like grading underneath the LUT?
Yeah.
Stuff?
I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
That's on the agenda. Don't worry about it, man.
Okay.
Remind me if I forgot about it. So, before we spend too much time, how do you call it? I don't know why.
In Lightbox.
Yeah, in Lightbox. So, I want to, how do you call it? Group my clip. So you can group your clip by just simply selecting the clip here in your timeline, but you can also use the Lightbox feature and then group your clip there. So as I told you before, I want to group it per scenes, right? So we have like this clip that was shot in the same locations, and I think that should be in the same group, because you'll see the reason why later. So here I can just like right click and add into a new group, and here outdoor, I can just name it outdoor. Okay, and the riding clip, it's probably in the same group because it looks like it belongs to the same scene. And add into new group.
So you typically group by scene and not by camera or
exactly. And the reason you'll see soon. Let me just consider that everything is done. If we go to this clip and let me just filter it to outdoor, you'll see that now instead of only 2 dots, we have like 4 different dots, right? And here I have like the pre-clip, the clip itself, and then the post-clip, and then the timeline. Of course, I cannot access the timeline because I have the filter on, so I need to disable the filter, but I'm not gonna do that today. So what I want to mention, what I want to share is that you can use your timeline to create the overall look for your footage, and you can create like the specific look for your scene on the post clip, and then in the clip level itself, you can like do all the color corrections necessary for that clip, right? Which is we'll build the note structure right after this. And in the pre-clip, like Chad asked before, what do I use pre-clip normally? So normally, if I am not using ACES color management in my project settings, this is where I put my input device transform. So this is exactly where I tell my this is where I use like things like color space transform or ACES transform to transform my clip from camera space into the color management framework. And then on the timeline later on, like at the end, I have like the output device transform. But that's just one use of it. Another way I'm using the group pre-clip is that whenever I want to use effects that emulate the lens characteristic, or that has something to do with lights, like for example diffusions, or by the way, if you're loving diffusions, you probably know that in current Magic Bullet looks, there's a new tool called the optical diffusions. It's like really crazy good, and that's exactly where I'm going to use my diffusions effect in the pre-clip before everything got corrected. So it's still in the camera space, not really in the camera space. It's like before all the color corrections happens. So it still have like this how do you call it, unaffected signals, so to say. Does it answer your question, chat? So for example, haze and flares, this is where the place where I'm going to use that in group pre-clip.
That's interesting. So why, okay, so this is a different question than the group pre-clip, but like, why would you put haze and flares in a pre-clip? I'm used to the visual effects world where like the lens flares are like the last thing you put on. So like as you kind of like build up your scene, you kind of start to see later where the highlights are, and then you mask things. Like, you make highlights where there weren't highlights. And so I think of like adding flares and things as like the last step in the chain, because you don't know where the highlights are going to be until you're done with everything. So I'm curious
that's
why
actually
you put that
very nice.
first.
That's a very nice argument, and I didn't think about that. You know, so having you telling me that, it's probably triggering me the how do you call it? Inspire me to do more research about that. But the reason why I like to do that is actually it's coming from the emulating the film pipeline. So for example, when you're shooting with film, um, you normally shoot on film negative, and then there are some lab process that happens in the middle, and then at the end you print it on the film print. That's the train of thought that I normally use. So the film print, since it's like at the end of the process, I normally use it like at the timeline level, or in the group post clip level. And then whenever I want to emulate the film negative, so to say, because you know sometimes film negative has like different color compared to the digital footage that you have, this is where I put it in the group pre-clip. And with that same thought, I assume that anything that anything that affects the light, I want it to be in the very first, how do you call it, place, where whenever it is in the place where it's not get how do you call it, changed anything. So the response is still pretty linear. You haven't changed the gamma, you haven't changed the gain and or lift in the color corrections. You still have like the similar response, similar curve from what you have in your camera. But you are making great point, since you know after the color corrections is actually where you can really see the targeted highlights and so on. So that's
But I think what you're saying is a great point too, though, because I mean,
yeah,
like if you're really emulating, you know, optical diffusion, then
yeah,
it would be baked into the footage. So
exactly.
starting out there is also like, I mean, they both seem like viable options.
Yeah, like halations effect, for example. This is where I use it in the group pre-clip before all my color corrections happen, because normally halations come with the footage, right?
You want to integrate it, really.
Exactly.
I guess that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, thank you so much,
So
Tony.
it lives in there, and then everything you're doing is averaging that color. So the visual effects don't have to be graded separately. They can be integrated and graded as though they lived inside of the scene already.
Yeah. So without further ado, let me share the how do you call it, the node structure that we use to grade this piece. I saved one here in the power grade. So if you want to, I can share it as well in the recording, in the recording, how do you call it, in the recording of the sessions, right? So just to give you a preview, we'll build it ourselves, but you know, just to give you a preview, what we did is that, you know, I have these things going on. And at first it probably looks like, oh, okay, it looks like very complicated, but if you understand the approach, probably it's not that complicated. So let me just reset everything by pressing Control Home. That's Control and Home button, by the way. So the first thing that I normally want to do is that, you know, I leave one node just for my noise reductions, right? So noise reductions at the front, and then after that 2, 3, or 4 nodes just for my balancing, and that's normally consist of my white balance, contrast level, and then also the exposure. So I mean, this 3 node you can just do in one node if you want to, but then if you adjusting the contrast in like the same node with exposure, you cannot like the preview what contrast adjustment that you just did. So having it in the separate node, dedicated node, that's like really neat. And then after that, after the balancing things, after the balancing sections, I normally dedicate some sections to modify the lighting situation. So for example, if I want to emulate how the scene was lit on the scene, or if there's no light used in the scene at all, and I just want to make it more like beautiful, that's where I use it. You know, the power window sections. It's like the sections to digitally relit the scene. So I'll create another node here. Yes.
Max, can I ask you just a quick question to make sure I'm on the same page? So you're working in the group pre-clip. So then is this applying?
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much. This supposed to be in the clip sections, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just making
chat.
sure.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Awesome. Again, this is the white balance, contrast.
Yeah.
And
You could have cut and paste though, right? I think you could have cut. That's all right. You
So
want to do it step by step again.
Exactly. So here I'll just like stack everything with Alt and P to create the, how do you call it, the parallel node, and another one. So, and here it's just literally just the same like serial corrector node, instead of like it's happening like one after the other, everything happened at once, and then the total sum will be mixed with this node over here. So here in this 4 different nodes, I'll use it for my you know, power windows. If I want to put like negative flag or fill light, that's where I do it. And I can create the things like for example, if I draw a window here, ideally, or let not just do that here, because the last node here, I normally do it as vignette node. So for example, if I'm creating a vignette, something like that, I want to access the area inside the vignette like this, and I also would love to access the area outside of the vignette as well in the you know, in the dedicated node. And ideally I would like to have like 2 different nodes sharing the same how do you call it, the same vignette shape, but one for the inside and one for the outside. And I can do that just by selecting this node and pressing Alt O, or create outside, where is it, add node, add outside, right? So now I'll do exactly the same for the other 3 node. So I'll just press Alt O, or what's the name in Mac? Alt
Option.
Options. So any shape that I draw here, like for example, if I draw like a gradient here, any shape that I draw here, it will show like the inside shape, the area that affected, and then here on the outside it's pretty much the opposite. So that's pretty neat. So I can just like play around with that. But the thing, instead of having the signal coming from the color corrected, this area over here, for all these windows that I want to block, I want to mimic it as if it is like happening with the clip again. So I can just like detach this one, detach that one, and then pick it right away from the source, except from my vignette, because vignette, I want the color corrections happening before the vignette, and vignette is just on top of that. I mean, if I want to be like more precise and say that, yeah, the vignette has to be like emulating the real like lens, then I can just take it from the source. The difference is like very minimum. It's like you really have to play by yourself to feel like the difference. I think it's like you can get like really smoother if you have like smoother effect if you have like the signal coming from the source right away. So that's like the power window sections. And the sections after that is the stuff that I want to do like for my how do you call it, secondaries. So for example, if I want to target my skies, and if there are like a shot that requires like a skin retouch, and that's where I want to do it. Or my curve versus curve, like sat versus luminance or stuff like that. This is where it come next. So I create a new node, and here, same as before, instead of like having it as a serial node, let's have it as a parallel node. So maybe just 3 layer, and here probably I can dedicate that to sky, and probably another one. And the last one here, I normally dedicate them whenever I want to add or remove texture. So softening, sharpening, it's right over there. And then here, it's like curve, and then the same, also curve. And then here, it can be anything. OFX, for example. If I want to use my color compressor or anything, that will be used on that node. And then, ideally, I want to have another node to, how do you call it? Whenever I finish color correcting, I'll go to the timeline and then create the looks. And depends on the look that I create. Sometimes it needs adjustment. It needs me to do an adjustment. But in doing so, I don't want to change my primary corrections that I already did for the clip initially, because I will lose track what I have done previously. So to do that, I will just create a like 3 trims node. And just like that. So trim 1, it's for me whenever I after creating a look and there's any exposure adjustment that need to be done, it will be done in the trim 1. And in trim 2, for example, if I already submitted to Tony and Tony said like, I don't like it, the red is a little bit purple, can you change it a little bit more red? Then I'll do it trim 2. And then in case Tony said like, yeah, I changed my mind, I like that one, so you already know, oh, that was in trim 2. So just reset trim 2 or deactivate it, and that's it, you got it. And trim 3 is like the very last minute actions. Anytime like, I don't know, anybody asks like, could you change something, like small things, maybe the jeans is a little bit too washed out, maybe, could you do that? And that probably request from the partner, from the jeans company that we are shooting his jeans for, or something like that. That's where I did, where I do it. Right. So that's like the quick look into the process of creating my node structure. So if we want to grade that, if we want to grade this clip, first, what I'm gonna do is that I will just do my exposure adjustment, and this part of the node, perhaps just tackling the exposure using the offset or the gain wheel, and adjusting the contrast right after that, changing the pivot, and maybe change the white balance. And in this case, I will just use my offset, perhaps a little bit too red, a little bit too blue, reduce blue, and then you got yellow, and that's it. And
hey, Max, can I ask
yes.
a question?
Mm-hmm.
So like one of the things that you taught me on Maxon Color, which has been like really epic, is grading underneath the LUT. And so like, when this came in, it already felt like the blacks were really strong to me. At least maybe that's just like the way it's coming across, like on the monitor versus on the webinar, blah, blah, blah. But like for me, I like to start out when I'm grading with it just kind of like a little bit more flat. But all of the LUT was kind of just like built in from scratch. Like, so how do you, I mean, like from the ground up, it's just like it already comes in that way because of the LUT. So how could you grade underneath the LUT if it's already applied when you start out?
Great question, Chad. So you mean like if I grade under a technical LUT or a creative LUT that gives you like a film emulation slot or anything? What you?
So like the I guess like the technical LUT when you first when you were in the Lightbox and you converted everything using like
Okay.
the
So
Sony LUTs and the Canon LUTs.
once I mentioned once I tag everything with the, how do you call it, with the output device transform, input device transform, it changed the look of the clip right away, right? So
Right.
the way I like to understand that is that, you know, it brings the clip closer to what the camera manufacturer think as a best interpretations of the correct, how do you call it, the best representations of a correct good look. So it doesn't bring me to my, it doesn't lead me, or how do you call it, it doesn't give me the final piece, but it gives me like the close proximity to that, like final
You just have a low,
destination.
you have a lower seeing. You have a lower ceiling. Chad just
Exactly.
wants a higher ceiling. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of like looking at it like this, I like to like, perhaps I like to look at it like something is really wrong with my resolve today. So, you know, instead of looking at it as log clip, like everything washed out, I like to see it as a normalized clip, because by doing that, I know that, you know, the highlight is already like pretty much in the ballpark, and the shadow is pretty much in the ballpark. I just need to tweak it up a little bit or pull the highlight just a little bit. So it's not really like interpreting the clips as per like how I like it. It gives you like a it takes you halfway.
Right.
How they
Like
say.
it's starting
You
point.
just, let me add one thing.
Yeah.
I think, you know, when this comes from a flattened cut that's a ProRes, right,
Mhm.
you kind of get something more general. And
Yeah.
like, if Chad wanted to have something flat, that he wouldn't add the ODT to some of
Exactly.
these. He would, instead of going through all the like going to Cine 3, you know,
Yeah.
S-Log 3, instead of doing any of that, you would just leave it flat and then start working with it. And you
Yeah.
can treat each, you can still categorize and treat them each differently.
Yeah.
And I was going to say another thing on that is you can create a smart filter instead of when you go to the Lightbox and you were tagging them
Mhm.
inside of your timeline. When you go to the clip menu, if you go to the clip menu and just twirl down over to the right, the one all the way to the top right, above next to, there it is. So over there, there's an option for create smart filter, because there's not an option for clip
Here.
color. Yep. So clip
Okay,
color
yeah.
is not there by default, but change where it says graded, and then go to clip color. Yep. And then in here you can make one for orange. Only
Yeah.
thing that's going to pop up is orange,
That's really
and then
great. I'm not
and then
aware
call
of
that,
this.
and then
This,
share it across
yeah.
projects and standardize
This
it.
is even better, because now you can like just filter everything from the clip color, and then you dedicate the ODT there,
And you
then
put the show in projects,
yeah,
show in all projects, so it goes across your whole system. So
great.
the other thing I would say is like, yeah, skip the ODT step for Chad before, you know, as soon as you do
Yeah.
that, now you're literally compressing it like this, and then it's fine detail versus if you want to do larger paint strokes. That's what it's.
I think what I want to
I've always,
bring back to your attention, chat. You remember back in the day when we have the session with Cullen, he mentioned that,
yeah.
you know, using the ODT is like telling the system is like, hey, there are like 10 pound of dirt. Could you like fit it into the like this 5 pound of sack? How do you do it? Is like really depends on you. You can like do it your way, normalizing the clip using lift gamma gain, using your own method, or you can also just use the ODT that was backed up with the math from the people that create that in the academy, and then just tweak it a little bit from there. So using the
Now,
ODT. Using
sorry,
the
go ahead.
ODT, it just give me a little bit more security that I'm not like
That's
clipping.
that Sony looks like Sony and Canon looks like Canon
Yeah,
to the
something
full
like that.
potential. The thing that's
Now, see, like,
lost. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, so what I've always done is just graded it by hand because I feel
Yeah.
like much more comfortable with the
Yes.
way that I bring it into like harmony with like normal colors
Yeah.
than with like a LUT. LUTs always feel too crunchy to me. It's like already too, like the highlights are already blown out, the shadows are crunched. It's
Yeah.
just like it's too much. So,
What
but
That's why you got aces. Aces is to bring all that stuff back, even if it looks crunched. When you adjust your settings, it brings it back in. But
okay,
I
so that's
guess
what they call it.
and
What Colin Kelly talked about was that I remember coming away from those conversations feeling like I need to use the LUTs. I need to just get into aces, and if it looks too crunchy, then I could do that thing where I grade underneath the LUT.
exactly.
But
And
then if the LUT's already this way and it's already like the highlights are a little bit too bright for me, the shadows are a little bit too dark, what do I do in this case?
in this case, for example, if I want to like reduce the highlight, I should do that before my output device transform or under the LUT, so to say, because I still have like the wide dynamic range of the camera original, or how do you call it, the ProRes 444, before it is then limited to Rec 709 display. But the thing is like it's not like everything has to be done like under the LUT. Normally when I'm using LUT for my look, let's just disable clips. Let me just select like all clips. So for example, if I'm here using my LUT, and this is by the way a LUT like 2383 print film LUT that you can download in ColinKellyColor.com, by the way. It's a how do you call it, the print film LUT that is like, how do you call it, that was modified to work well inside ACES or inside the Resolve color management. So where is it? FPE color manage. So there you go. So for example, if I have my LUT like this, any like highlight adjustment that I want to do, I will do it before my LUT. But then if I want to like deepen my blacks, or do like increasing the black level, or crushing my clip a little bit, and this is like the area where I will do it after the LUT, like bringing the blacks down. So
Right.
I don't know if that
So
answers
basically,
the question, chat.
well, basically, I guess, I mean, if you've done this already at the group level, like we did in the Lightbox, then like it sounds like there's just not really a way to grade underneath the LUT, because the LUT's just kind of like
Yeah,
that's the floor,
it is.
and
It
you
is
can't
not.
go on.
It is not doing the transformations anymore because the ODT is doing the transformation. So anything that you do before the ODT is like similar to grading under the LUT, so to say.
Okay, but
Right.
didn't you do the ODT in the Lightbox?
Yeah, but the ODT will be applied right at the end before the signal. How do you call it? Hitting the.
Oh,
So all we see here is just a preview. It's not baked in.
so everything is under the LUT essentially.
Everything is
Like
under the ODT. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That's
And it's not. Yeah, you're right.
Let me add one disclaimer. If this was all like the MXFs or the raw file or whatever, we would have even more to work with. Like you every time you do a transcode, you're at the mercy of whoever transcoded it, and if they transcoded it in Premiere versus Resolve, you have different color language there, and you can normalize it. But if I normalize this, I make it a flat ProRes. Now I send it to you, and even though I know which camera, there's still characteristics of that camera in all these shots, but it's nothing like the MXF that came camera original. So we've already lost a tad of the what is that? What the manufacturer intend, to it to look like. But if you already know that, even though we cut it up, right? If you already know that on a flattened ProRes file, you can end up with something and pull out all the characteristics of each scene, knowing what camera is what. But this is all like a flattened ProRes. If this were the MXFs and the Canon-log, the Canon raw files, we would have a little bit more grit and detail to work with. But we've normalized it ahead of time, and then cut it up. But then now we're going per scene and gripping each one with this is Sony, this is Canon.
So yeah, I will show you the post scene group, by the way. Let me continue showcasing the use of these nodes. By the way, if you are interested on the detailed grading of this piece, make sure that you join us in Demystifying Post Productions on the 4th week, because it's similar like this, except that I will not walk you through the creations of the node structure. So for example, here I have like a gradient window, and here inside the gradient I'll just like, perhaps instead of gradient, let's just draw some like shape. Please excuse me if everything is like rushed, because I know that we are running over the time at the moment.
It's okay, Max.
So I'll soften it just like by whole a lot, and then probably I want to track it, but you know, just consider it is tracked. And here I can just like reduce the amount of highlight, bring back the highlight, and since it's like very soft, you will not be able to notice what's happening there. It's, you know, it's like very soft and very white. Just reduce the highlight over there, and perhaps here just bring up the talent a little bit. And here's a nice thing: if you like just use like shape like this, under the 3 dots you have the options to convert to Bezier, and then now you can just like use the whole things that you have here as a Bezier curve and soften it by a lot. And ideally, tracking it, consider that we track it. And then just bring the gain a little bit. And since this is a clip about, this is a movie film about motorcycle, perhaps I want to see like the motorcycle like a really, you know, in a more
prominent yeah.
way. So let's just draw a shape around the Harley. Now I see that, you know, Sammy, the talent, is like blocking my shape, and we can remedy that like really easy. First, I just need to adjust the softness, and now under the same node, I'll click plus curve, means like I can draw another curve, and I'll just do the outline of the talent, adjust the softness, around 4 probably, highlight on, bring it inside, pull it outside, and here I'll click intersects like that, so Sammy is excluded. Now you can track these 2 windows, and now anything that I do in this node, I can just increase the gain, increase the gamma a little bit probably, increase the contrast, adjust the pivot point, something like that. And I think you'll agree with me that you're seeing more of the Harley Davidson over there. And in the vignette, you can just like reduce the details and then reduce the gain instead of the offset, something like that. And then so on and so forth. I can still do like tweaking the secondaries. Like for example, if I want the purple to be more like red, I can do it here in this node. And if the highlight is still way too bright, I can just bring it back in a little bit, something like this. And perhaps here, increase the gamma a little bit, or increase the gain a little bit, something like that. So noise reductions, I think you know how to use the noise reductions. So let me talk to you about the trim node, the first trim node over here. And this normally I use it when I am like creating a look. and then I'll use it to like tweak the look to cater the clip. For example, if I'm using the print film, which is like looking very nice, but it looks a little bit too contrasty, probably I can just like increase the gain a little bit or reduce the contrast a little bit, and that's where trim node number 1 where I use the trim node number 1. So ideally I'll use it in comparison with another clip just to balance them out. And in the post clip, for example, I can just change the color temperature, perhaps introduce some yellow by reducing some blue, and increase some red a little bit by 1 point. And this adjustment will be applied to whole clips that belongs to the same group. And that, by just doing simple adjustment like that, it will affect the whole clips in the same scene. So if you want a particular scene to be warmer than the other, that's where you do it. Or if you want a particular scene is cooler than the other, that's where you do it. And as before, the group pre-clip here, I'll use my secret weapon, magic bullet looks.
Yep.
Half
The
looks
flavor
funny.
packet.
Oh man, that's emulating diffusion just it cannot be so easy like what we have here in looks. Use control open color IO, aces, set my input to be aestheticity because we are in aestheticity. I want to output it same as input. Preview it in Brick 709 and just drag and drop my optical diffusion. So for example, if I want to emulate like as if the shot was
Black Pro Mist.
no, not Black Promise, man. Glimmer glass. I like the glimmer glass.
There you go.
There you go. And just by doing that, I can get like this very subtle bloom in the highlight and adjust the strength a little bit. And this is also probably the place if I want to add some halations. So that's the approach of creating like this node structure. Let me know in the comment. Let me know in the comment if you want it, so I can just like put it into the descriptions of the recording. Right.
Hey, Max.
Yes.
Max, could I quickly share my favorite keyboard shortcut in the whole world?
Yes.
For those
please.
that are new,
Yes,
that are
please.
new to Resolve, that like, you know, creating this like complex node structure might take a while. So again, especially if you're new, and you have clips that are in the same scene. A lot of times they're going to have, you know, similar color. They're going to need similar stuff as a jumping off point to quickly copy all of this to other clips. You could like middle mouse button click on a clip, suck up everything. It's the greatest keyboard shortcut in any program ever. It's just so brilliant and so helpful.
It's amazing. That's why work with mouse with a middle mouse button.
Always.
Whenever you work in Resolve, use that. So for example here, if I have this, I'll just, I mean, if I want to copy everything in this node tree to this clip, for example, I just like right.
Or multiple clips. Or even
multiple
more
clips.
Yeah.
Or multiple clips like that, and just
Middle mouse button click.
middle mouse button.
Unbelievable.
Of course, the windows will not play nicely because, you know, obviously it's not.
It's a custom fit.
Exactly. It's custom fit. You have to track it. Right.
It's not a
So-
suit
Get
off
you the
the
ball.
rack.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you learned something, and yeah, along with us. So if you want to check out the recording to get the note structure file, I'll upload that in the descriptions of our recording. Simply go to Maxon Training Team and check out the playlist. Under the playlist, you can go to Maxon Color. It will be somewhere up here. Now we're live, right? So that's it. And if you want to check out the events that we are hosting at Maxon, please visit maxon.net/events, and you'll see that we'll be at SIGGRAPH next week. So if you happen to be at SIGGRAPH as well next week, please stop by and say hello. We'll be very happy to do that. And I think next Demystifying Post Productions, Tony and Chad will be doing it live from SIGGRAPH.
Yes.
So we'll hope to see you there. We'll talk about the shooting aspect of this webinar. And then after that, we go through edit. And then week 4, we have grade, and Chad will close the month by introducing breaking down the VFX side of it. So I hope to see you in one of those sessions. Thank you so much for joining us today. And also, don't forget to get your free T-shirt. Check out the link and code in the chat. Right? Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you so much, Chad.
Yeah, my pleasure, buddy.
See you again in the next sessions. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Take care.